Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on the exhibit category for the 2020-21 Tennessee History Day contest season. My name is Jennifer Kaur. I'm joined today by Nikki Ward, who's going to be working with us starting in October, and Hannah Zeckman, who's our Assistant State Coordinator, and Lisa Oakley, who is the Regional Coordinator for East Tennessee History Day. Oh, it looks like I have to go down here to the bottom to go to the next slide. All right, the Tennessee Historical Society is the host of Tennessee History Day. We're a membership-based organization. We do have a special teacher rate of $25 if you're interested in joining. We also put out the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture, which is a good resource for students looking for topics. And we also publish the Tennessee Historical Quarterly, which is a benefit of membership. So today, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us your name and what your role is in History Day and what your school is. We'll talk about the characteristics of the exhibit category. We'll go over the rules changes for this particular category. We'll talk about virtual creation of the exhibit versus 3D or real in-person exhibit. We'll share some resources with you. Talk about the software for creating submissions and the actual submission of your entry. All right, so who should compete in the exhibit category? Students who have the time to do the research and to craft that research into an exhibit. This year, because the stress is going to be on virtual completion of your project, you need to have a good grasp of design, how text and images can work together to tell a story. You're also going to need some technical skills. So if you don't like sitting in front of the computer, putzing around and changing the size of an image by a centimeter and nudging it over 1 millimeter, this may not be the category for you this year. We are offering the option of taking a 3D exhibit and turning it into a virtual exhibit. We don't recommend that. We recommend that you start off digitally and you continue with a digital exhibit until you're done and have submitted it. But if you really just love the idea of working with papers and scissors, you can still do that, but you're going to have to photograph your exhibit and turn it into a digital exhibit. So do take that into account while you're considering this category. Another thing you need to think about is if you want to work as an individual or in a group. If you're working in a group, how are you going to collaborate if all of a sudden we all go back into lockdown again, which could happen? How are you going to start your project? Are you going to start it with paper and pencil, or are you going to start it on the computer? Again, we recommend starting on the computer. You need to think about how you're going to format it as a PDF. We've done a tutorial that shows you how to do that and how you upload that into the registration system. So access to technology is going to be very important. If you are collaborating electronically or digitally, you'll need to look at the program you're using to see if it allows you to add members or to add accounts to your file. All right, so the goal this year, the end goal of your submission is a PDF. And how do you create this? You start digitally and then you save as a PDF after you've created your exhibit. If you start with a real life in-person exhibit, you're going to have to photograph it and import those photos into a template and stitch them together. You will be judged on this virtual submission, not on a 3D exhibit. We've created a Google Draw template. In order to access this, you must have a Gmail account and Google Drive. Many graphic design programs exist that can work. We do have a list of programs on the virtual contest resources page. Here you can see graphic design programs where we've laid them out for you. I think I've got them here. All right, so I'll just go through these very briefly. Actually, this is kind of an outdated image here, sorry. So we're recommending Google Draw because you can make it as big as 74 by 72, which is the maximum size allowed. Google Slides also allows you to do that. With PowerPoint, the maximum size allowed, I think, is 56 by 56. With Canva, the maximum size allowed is 60 by 45. Adobe Sparks, the maximum size allowed is 20 by 20. So you could actually conceivably do Adobe Spark and you could do 320 by 20 different pages, but then you would have to join those together into one big PDF if you wanted to submit that. So something to think about. There are lots of programs for purchase. All of these programs here on the left are free. The programs here on the right are for purchase. Photoshop and InDesign. Photoshop is the king of all programs. It's also very expensive. If you already have Photoshop and if you already have InDesign, if you already have these skills, please feel free to use those programs. I don't want to hold you back in any way, but do know this is not really the time to be learning how to do historical research and how to operate Photoshop, because it can be a very complex program. Different people use it for different needs. I use it as a photographer, so that's a very different way of using it than a graphic designer would use it. And that graphic designer uses it in a very different way than somebody who is an editor. So just, if you already have it, if you know how to use it, great, go for it. Feel free to use Photoshop. All right, so let's talk about what's acceptable adult assistance. If you're working digitally, if an adult helps you learn the different shortcuts of the software, that's fine. If an adult demonstrates that for you, that's fine. If an adult creates an account for you, because you do have to create an account for Adobe Spark, for Canva, and for both Google Slides and Google Draw, that's fine. If you're making an exhibit from scratch out of real pieces of material, if the adult uses a power tool to cut boards up for you, that's fine. But then you need to be the one to paint it and decorate it. All right, when it comes to rules change, the exhibit media time limit has been shortened to 2 minutes and cannot be on a continuous loop. And actually, this is not true. There is not a place on the exhibit template for a link to media. I recommend you don't include media this year. In fact, I don't really think media does that much in the exhibit category. A lot of times it's more of a problem than something that can help you. You know, like if you leave your expensive electronic gear out there and then you have to walk away and the exhibit hall is open to the public, we're not responsible if somebody decides to stick that in their pocket. Also, you're depending upon the judges, if you're in person, to press a button and listen to whatever it is. You also have to edit whatever it is down to 2 minutes. So let's say you're doing a project on Cole Porter and you want to include some of his music. You're going to have to find a perfect 2 minutes to use. You can't use all 3 minutes and 49 seconds of the entire song. So my recommendation is just leave the media out this year. Links to external content are prohibited. A resource for you, not necessarily for the digital version of this, but just for exhibits in general, is if you go to the NHD website, which is nhd.org, and you go to the shop, you can find this lovely book, How to Create a Historical Exhibit, for $29. Another thing that you'll want to take a look at is our Getting Started page, found here on our website. If you go to the far left tab, it says Getting Started. Here's where you'll find the most recent version of the rulebook, the theme book, the theme video, a graphic organizer, a bibliography of Tennessee topics. Definitely the best thing you can do for yourself is to read the rulebook. We have created a page we're calling Virtual Contest Resources. Here we have the important dates for your contest and then links to the 5 category webinars and 5 open house sessions that we are hosting. All right, so when you go to the Virtual Contest Resources page, if you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see a tab that says Exhibit. That's what you'll want to click on for specific information about this category. When you get to the exhibit page, you will find the rules for the virtual submission. So let's talk about these here. Again, you're submitting a PDF. You're not going to submit a trifold board. I think actually I have these. Yeah. Okay, so you want to create your digital exhibit using any program that's available to you and that you know how to use. We've set up a template for you in Google Draw. When you submit it, you're submitting a PDF. How you get to that PDF is up to you. We don't necessarily care. Somebody might ask me, well, Ms. Kaur, what's the magic trick? You know, what's the program I should use if I really want to win? The judges aren't going to know based on what they're looking at which program that you used to create your exhibit. We want you your exhibit has to conform to all of the rules except the size requirements, and it cannot be larger than 74 inches wide by 72 inches high. The font size must be 20-point font or larger. And for the credits, the information that goes underneath your images, your quotes, those have to be 12-point font or larger. And I found when I was doing the sample for the Google Draw, 20-point font is tiny. I mean, I was putting things into 72-point font. So you do need to think about and have an awareness of your audience, what your judges are going to want to see. They're not going to want to strain. They're not going to want to have their eyes fall out of their head from looking at teeny tiny text on a very small screen. On the exhibit virtual contest resources page, you will see that as a PDF under exhibit submission guidelines. And then you'll also see the template that I created for you. And so what you'll do is you will click on that link, Google Draw template, and you will get a window that says, do you want to make a copy? You have to have your Google Drive set up in order to be able to do this. So you say, yes, I want to make a copy, and boom, there it is. There's the template. It's 74 inches across, 72 inches tall, and it is a blank canvas for you to create your exhibit. Now, I would recommend that you already have selected. You need to know what your title is. You need to know what your subheadings are. You need to have your text composed. You need to have selected the quotes that you want to use. And honestly, I wouldn't recommend more than 2. I think 2 is going to be fine. We want the focus to be on your words and your interpretation. You want to have all of your images pulled out, and you want to think about your color scheme. Decide all of this before you actually start to work on it. Then once you get it on there, you can say to yourself, I've got some extra space. I think I need another image. Or, wow, this is looking really crowded. I think I need to take one of these quotes out. When it comes to submitting your entry, this is something you're going to do within the registration system. You will go to your account, and there's a tab there that says Upload File, Entries Paper. There's going to be 2 upload keys here. So you will submit your cover sheet, process paper, and bibliography in that order as a PDF by clicking on Upload File next to Entries Paper, and then you're going to see another one that says Entry, and it will say Upload File, and that's where you will upload the PDF of your actual exhibit. Some important dates to remember: if you are in these counties in Northeast Tennessee, you have a district contest. Your registration opens Friday, October 2nd. That is coming up pretty soon. Your registration deadline is Friday, October 30th, and your contest is Friday, November 20th. Now, the top two medalists in each category in these two districts will qualify for the regional contest in East Tennessee. So we have 5 regional contests across the state. Regional contest registration is going to open Tuesday, December 1st. The registration deadline for all educators is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. That is the day after Martin Luther King Day. And the registration deadline for students is Monday, February 1st. All right, coming up next week, we're going to have our webinar on papers, and on the Tuesday after that on documentaries, and then we'll skip a week. We have a Discover Tennessee History webinar in there between the 6th and the 20th. Our last webinar will be on Tuesday, October 20th. All webinars start at 4 o'clock Central Time. We will record all of them and post them after the fact if you miss them. We have open house sessions. We encourage you to drop by with any questions you have, or if you want to try an idea out on us. It's a free flowing conversation. Our first one will be Tuesday, November 3rd, and we'll have 5 of them between November and January. Okay, I'm going to stop our recording here, and we can, if you have any questions, now's the time to ask them.
Jennifer, I have a question. Do you have an example of what this might look like?